What's up guys, Paoli here with freestyleconnection.com, and today we're talking about the CrossFit Games OPEN 15.2 Deja Vu. When they announced it, I kind of started crying on the inside because last year it was a sufferfest. I did it at CrossFit Reykjavik and I had Annie Thor's daughter actually cheer me on. It was awesome, but I suffered a lot. And something I learned last year was that this is really a game of learning how to pace from the first repetition. And it has two of my favorite movements, overhead squat, chest to bar pull-up, but just because they were my favorite didn't make it any better. One of the things that I talked about last year was shoulder position, and I said, hey, if you can get your hands a little bit closer together during that overhead squat, it will allow you to actually stack the shoulder up a little bit better and feel more comfortable or recovered when you get into the pull-ups. Now, if you have very stiff shoulders, going a little wider is actually going to facilitate that overhead position, and it's something that you're going to want to try to actually maintain throughout the whole workout. So it depends on who you are, what kind of mobility level you have. You're going to want to go a little bit closer or a little bit wider. I also talked about last year, foot position. If you are used to squatting fairly narrow, for this overhead squat, it may be a good thing to go slightly wider. This slightly wider stance, what it allows you to do is actually keep your chest upright a little bit more and not have to complete as much depth in order to find that tension and be able to bounce out of the hole. So those are some things to think about. But what I did learn was breathing is key from rep number 1, and it's pacing. And in terms of breathing with the overhead squat, you have a couple opportunities to breathe, but the biggest one is at the top. Inhale, catch your breath, come down, exhale on the way up, inhale on the way at the top, big breath, down again, exhale on the way up, and really making that rhythm and the pace of the overhead squat match your breathing. That is key to continue moving in the overhead squats. It's not very heavy, but it gets heavy in terms of fatigue as you keep going up in that ladder. Now, chest to bar pull-ups, one of the things that I've talked about before, and you may have heard before, is as you try to get your chest to touch the bar, you want to think elbows behind the back. It's not just this chest bump towards the bar, it's also the arms that have to facilitate this. So really thinking elbows rip behind the bar. If you come over here with me on the bar, we talked about different styles of performing this pull-up. We can go with a kicking pull-up, where I go tuck, kick. That one right there is pretty effective to help you get your chest to the bar, but in terms of connecting repetitions, it's kind of tough and pretty fatiguing. The other option you have is more of a gymnastics looking pull-up, where your body is just a little bit tighter and you're able to swing in and out of it. You don't use so much of that leg kick. And then the last one, which is what the big dogs are using, is the butterfly pull-up, which would be linking that movement, there goes my mic, linking that movement with the butterfly pull-up. Big thing is just keep the elbows always ripping behind the back. Now, what I did realize last year is that jumping up onto the bar was really tiring and it took a lot of effort. So as you go into the later rounds, maybe you want to think about setting up 2 boxes, and these 2 boxes would allow you to go maybe 1 rep at a time. Hit the rep, come down, recover, arms come back up again, hit another rep, recover, and so on. And that little recovery right there is sometimes enough just to give you that extra rep, that extra little ounce of energy that you need, and you may even surprise yourself where you actually catch that second wind. So pacing is the name of the game. If you haven't watched my 14.2 video I did last year, I highly recommend that you go watch that. If you haven't watched tips from Mobility WOD in terms of how to improve thoracic mobility and shoulder mobility, I also recommend that you do that. And if you're not doing the workout until Monday, maybe you should spend some time also opening up the hips and making that feel better. So that's 15.2. It's a pacing game, strategy about having some boxes or elevating the ground so the bar is closer to you and you can go 1 rep at a time. may actually save you. And in the overhead squat, remember breathing is key. And then next week, hopefully, we'll have another fun one. All right, see you guys later.